All the roll and go, where am I to go? Meet Johnny, where am I to go? For I'm a young and a sailor lad, and where am I to go?
Hello, and welcome to Where Am I to Go podcast. Today, before we start the show, I would like to bring up some business things that have kind of been on my mind so that you can know where to get more Where Am I to Go. First off, I'd like to talk about the Facebook page at Where Am I to Go podcast. It's on Facebook, and we've been posting some wonderful pictures of some of the places that we've been and some of the adventures that we've had. Not everything that we go and do is made into a podcast, and so we take pictures at different places and post those pictures so that you guys can enjoy some of the different places we've been. Also, I really am interested in listener feedback. I have an email address at whereamiitogopodcast@gmail.com. Again, that is whereamiitogopodcast@gmail.com. I would love to hear some of the listeners' comments and some of their ideas of places that might be interesting to visit and go and do. I am excited about today's podcast. We are in Topeka, Kansas. Last night we spent the night at Truckhenge, which you'll just have to look at the pictures. But today we're going to go through what I would consider a childhood dream. We are at the Evel Knievel Museum in Topeka, Kansas. I guess it is the largest collection of Evel Knievel stuff in the world. And we are here with Mike. He is the owner of a HarleyDavidson dealership. They have some beautiful bikes here. And the Evel Knievel Museum, that to me is the attraction. Hey Mike, how are you doing?
Great, great. Fun to have you guys here today.
Oh, we're hoping that this is, from the little bit I've seen, this is going to be a blast.
Yeah, we're going to have fun.
We are.
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about your dealership.
Well, we're a long-time Harley dealership. My grandfather purchased it in 1949, but his story actually goes back to 1926 when he got into the Harley-Davidson business. So we've been in, our family's been in it over 90 years. In 49, he purchased it here in Topeka. And so I'm third generation. One of the things that we do is we embrace our history. So the name of our dealership is Historic Harley-Davidson. We're one of the top 10 family-owned dealerships as far as length of time for a family to own a Harley-Davidson dealership.
Wow.
So with that history, one of the things we kind of focus on and differentiate from other Harley dealers is we do restorations.
Okay.
So we, like right now in the dealership, we have about 6 restorations going for people all over the country, from Florida, Michigan, North Dakota, Colorado, New Orleans, Louisiana. So there's people that send their bikes here to have them done. So that's kind of, this kind of starts to tell the story of why the Evel Knievel Museum is here. So we, years ago, we did a job for rock and roll legend Jerry Lee Lewis.
Okay. So
they found out about us, and Harley had given him a bike in 1958. He'd kept it that long, but
wow.
It had gone into disrepair. So they had somebody start working on it to bring it back, and they disassembled the bike and kind of quit. Well, they called us, and we drove to Memphis and got to meet the killer, and went into his garage to get his bike, and we found it in sacks, buckets, boxes, drawers. So Bruce Zimmerman and I, my right-hand man, we went through everything, and we gathered it all up. Took us a couple hours to find everything. We brought it back here, put it together. Took us a while, but brought it back to museum quality. Got it back to Jerry Lee. He was thrilled. Their family was thrilled. He put it in his living room. The family made a decision to sell it through Mecum Auctions.
Okay.
And this was about 5 years ago. Mecum, they advertised it and publicized it a lot. and put it on the auction block. They started the auction. Halfway through, they stopped and brought Jerry Lee out, and he played Great Balls of Fire. And then they started the auction back up again, and the bike went for $385,000.
Holy smokes.
So it was a top 20 bike of all time at that point for auctions. So we were pretty proud of the fact that we brought it from buckets, rusted parts, to a $385,000 bike. Well, the story then goes to another year or two later, and the family called back and they said, hey, we have this business contact. His name is Lathan McKay, and he's the world's leading collector of Evel Knievel items. So and that perked me up because I've always been in this business, and I'm a kid of the 70s, and so I'm listening close, and they said, hey, he just purchased Evel's Mack Truck, his 1974 Mack Truck semi and trailer.
Oh, wow.
And they've taken it to a place in New Jersey to have it restored. And the people in New Jersey have looked at it for a year and haven't touched it, and he's frustrated. And we know you guys are in the restoration business, so do you know anybody that does Mack Truck restorations? And I just kind of blurted out, we do Mack Truck restorations. And never,
that's your forte, right?
Yeah.
That's what you've always done is Mack Truck restoration?
So I went and told Bruce that we... well, actually, they said, you do? And I said, well, yeah, we can do this, no problem. And they said, well, great, you guys did a great job on the bike, we'll hire you. And then I went and told Bruce what I'd done, and he said I was crazy, and maybe called me some names, and because honestly, neither one of us had ever been in a Mack Truck. So, but we took the job knowing that, it's just it's a restoration, and it's all this kind of the same, it's just bigger. And then, we can't take credit for what happened completely ourselves, but we hired and brought in people from all over Topeka that were experts. Actually, at the end of the restoration, there had been over 90 different people and businesses that had a hand in putting this truck together, which we'll see here in the museum. So It went from really bad shape to an absolute, museum piece. And it's kind of the core of our museum, but also the reason why the Evel Knievel Museum ended up here in Topeka, because we got that job, we got to know Lathan. He didn't have any ideas of exactly what he was going to do with everything. And then along the process of working on the truck, we just said, hey, where's the Evel Knievel Museum at? We ought to just build a museum, and there isn't one. I'm like, well, why not? Let's just build it right here in the middle of the U.S. So we contacted the family. They'd always wanted a museum. They just didn't ever see it being in Topeka, Kansas. But once they saw what we had done on the truck, we kind of gained some credibility with them, and they believed in us and let us go for it, and here we are. So
wow.
That's why it's here.
Well, that's cool. Now, is the Knievel family still in Butte, Montana?
Parts of the family are in Butte, and parts are in Las Vegas. So,
okay.
Yeah.
I know that at one point in time they had some sort of something in Butte, Montana, because I'd travel through Montana and I'd always go, I need to go to the Evel Knievel Museum, and then all of a sudden it just wasn't there anymore.
Yeah, there was maybe a little bit of things in Butte, and his grave is there. There are things to see in Butte, but they don't really embrace it as a city.
No, they're more into the Irish thing.
Yeah, that's true. So,
St. Patrick's Day in Butte, Montana, I hear, is absolutely wild.
Well,
I have not ever gone. But
they also had Evel Knievel Days for many years, and just a couple of years ago they stopped having it. But so that was a big festival every year too. So in that regard, they did embrace it. We did get some calls from people from Butte after we opened up here, and they said, "Why the heck is this in Kansas, not in Butte, Montana?" And I just said, I don't live in Butte.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's why it's in Topeka.
That's the reason I grew up in Portland, Oregon. My parents didn't live in Wyoming. So
that's right. That's right. That's right. So you guys want to go in and check it out?
Oh yeah.
Do we want to go in?
Yeah, let's go.
Boy, that's kind of a risky question there.
Thank you.
Heck yes. No, as we're coming down this first hall after we stop at the entrance desk. By the way, how much is the entrance to this?
It's $15. For active military, veterans, and seniors, it's 12.
Okay.
And then kids is 7, but younger kids, it's free. So.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so as we're walking down this wall, you've got all of his records and different things that Evel Knievel said on a great big banner. It's kind of like a wallpaper, except it looks more like a canvas.
It's a 40-foot banner, and yeah, it just kind of has some different pieces of Evel's history. Like you said, some of his records. You know, there's records here too where it says he was in a coma for 40 days. And the great thing about Evel is all of his records and things like this are sometimes exaggerated. You know, because that was Evel. I mean, he promoted and,
right.
You know.
Well, we got hospital time, 3.5 years.
You know, it adds up, and then it's probably close to that. I mean, he was in the hospital a lot. He broke tons of bones, spent a lot of time in hospitals, and that's kind of what made him that's what made him famous when he crashed.
Right. You know, maybe we ought to jump back just a little tiny bit and explain to who Evel Knievel was to some of our younger audience, because you and I grew up in the 70s.
Yeah.
And every Stingray bicycle was jumped over little blocks with a ramp on it, a plywood ramp. Yep, just like that. A garbage can with a Schwinn bicycle, a kid wearing a helmet. Now everybody had to put on their helmet. Before helmets were cool, nobody wore helmets in the 70s unless they were playing Evel Knievel. Okay.
That's me.
That's you.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. So
there's a picture of him doing a wheelie in front of a. No, I see the jump. Yep. He was doing a jump in front of a car
Stingray bicycle.
On a Stingray bicycle.
Yeah, which is what all kids did. And then we have a wall here too. To your point of kids from all over the country from the 70s that were jumping their bicycles, mainly Stingray Schwinns. What they were doing, they were emulating Evel Knievel. And in the 1970s, really.
So did you ever jump one of your friends?
Oh, obviously, everybody always did that.
You put your friends in front of the ramp and jump them.
There's so much of that.
You have to wonder what the emergency room people thought every time that a kid came in with a broken arm.
So
Evel Knievel again.
Yeah, we collect newspaper articles, and there's many articles about how Evel was such a bad influence on kids because kids were going in there with broken arms. But people love to tell us stories too when they come to the museum about, yeah, I broke my arm, and it's a great story, you know. So it all ends well. So Evel, the reason he was so popular, he was really there were guys that jumped motorcycles before Evel Knievel, but nobody really did it on the scale or the promotion level that Evel did it.
Right.
He was the first guy that really figured out how to promote himself and went big and just kind of saw no boundaries as far as what he could accomplish. And he did it. But sometimes he crashed. But what made him so popular was even when he crashed, he didn't quit.
Right. Oh yeah.
You know, he came back.
And they weren't minor little crashes.
They weren't minor crashes.
He died of natural causes, didn't he?
Yeah, nothing related to crashing.
How in the world do you take the crashes? I've seen the crashes because I was a kid. I mean, jumping 15 buses or 20 buses and not hitting the ramp on the other side and just being a heap of bones.
Yeah, we'll see those jumps when we go through the museum here. But that's what made him a legend.
And plus, he had a really cool name.
He did. Do you know how he got his name? And we can talk about that.
Let's do that.
So the start of our museum here kind of tells the story from where he's a kid in Butte, Montana. And he grew up, Butte's a mining town, rough town. Back in the day, it was
Let's move
really
down just
place.
a little bit because the speaker here in the back is going to interfere with us a little bit. Okay, we're good.
So Evel, as a young kid, he was kind of a troublemaker, and ran around Butte and got in trouble. He rode a motorcycle, got thrown in jail one night for doing something, and there was another guy in Butte, Knievel. So the jailer had these two guys, Knievel kid and the Knievel kid, in the jail, And he said, it's going to be a heck of a night. I got Awful Knievel in here and Evel Knievel. And really, his name's Bobby Knievel, or Robert Knievel.
Okay.
So
That's funny.
kind of thought that sounded cool, you know, just like you said. It's just such a cool name. So he kept it. And with that name, he changed it from EVIL to EVEL, you know, so it's not evil.
Right.
And went from there. So, yeah, the name has meant a lot to his career. So, you know, I got to tell another story too here, because you see this board back here. It says the connection to Topeka, and we explained why the museum's in Topeka. But I had a lady walk into my office right after we had announced that the museum was going to be here, and she brought me a picture of Evel and her mom from the 1970s. And I thought, well, that's nice, and she's got, I blew it up for you, you can put it in your museum. I'm like, thank you, appreciate it. You know, I don't know where we're going to put it, but so I started asking questions. She said, well, we were family friends. And I go, well, tell me more. And she said, well, my uncle, his name was George, and he grew up just right south of Topeka. And George, as a kid, would take his dad's and his uncle's car at night and run the gravel roads, and kind of would steal him and cause trouble. And one night he crashed the car, rolled it, so they sent George off to military school. Well, George came back from military school, and now his sister lived in Topeka.
Okay.
So he's walking around Topeka looking for a job, and walks by this machine shop, Shorty's Meinholz Machine Shop. It's still here in Topeka. This is in the 1930s.
Okay. Wow.
So he walks in and Shorty says, well, I don't have a job for you, George, but I work on race cars. And if you want to help me, you can just come in and help at night. Well, he did. And they went to the races. And as the story has it, one of the drivers didn't show up for the race. So they put George in the car, and George won the race and started a racing career. Later, a few years later, he got misidentified as because of the sponsor on the car, and the reporter thought his name was Joey. So they went on and called him Joey from then on. Well, Joey went on in his career and raced at the Indianapolis 500 5 times.
Really?
He was the first driver to wear a seatbelt there. So he's kind of a groundbreaker. And then went on to, after his racing career, and started a thrill show called the Joey Chitwood Thrill Shows.
Okay.
Many of your listeners are going to know who the Joey Chitwood Thrill Shows were, because it was very popular through the 50s, 60s, and 70s. Well, the Joey Chitwood Thrill Shows went to Butte, Montana in the 50s. And there was a kid there, Bobby Knievel, and he saw this show. And on that day, he said, that's what I want to do.
Wow.
So Joey Chitwood was Evel Knievel's
Mentor.
inspiration.
Yeah.
And he's from Topeka.
Well, cool.
Yeah, so we were like, gives me goosebumps still when I tell that story, because it was like, well, maybe there's a connection here, and there's a reason why it's in Topeka, because Evel's, if it wasn't for this Topekan, Joey Chitwood, there would be no Evel Knievel.
Right.
So there we go.
Great how things
Yeah, it just was by chance. So,
And then on these walls, you've got a video down here about Chitwood.
Yep.
I was looking at that a little bit earlier, and then you've got some of his early beginnings, some pictures and stuff in Butte, Montana. And then we're over here, this says Hollywood, California. You've got a couple of early 60s pickups, and it looks like Evel's jumping those. They're parked back to back.
Yeah, so if you look at this display, it was called the Motorcycle Daredevils. And really based on the Joey Chitwood thrill shows, he was reinventing that, and he had a crew with him. So there was multiple guys that were doing this show with them.
Okay.
And they were going through firewalls like Chitwood. They were doing fun stuff. They kind of had a clown, and that was his first shows were doing that. Well, the way it turned out is he couldn't pay everybody. It wasn't being profitable enough that he could pay all the guys. So he went off on his own and just kind of kept the same thing. He was actually wearing yellow and black back then, as you see in these pictures. So that was his style pre the red, white, and blue.
Okay.
So the early beginnings of Evel Knievel, he wore yellow and black leathers. And this was what you're looking at here is a display that's actually a little bit before the Daredevils. One of his careers that he was trying to get put together as a young guy was he went in partners on a Honda shop.
Okay.
In the about the mid 60s. And to promote the shop at a parade, he was doing wheelies.
Okay.
And this is a display here showing of the same model bike, the Honda.
A 1966 Honda CL305 Scrambler. Which
a lot of visitors are going to know because it was a popular bike back in that day.
Right.
Well, he's wheeling that, and we've got a picture of him, the only picture from that day. But what he also did that day was he got his buddy, and Ray Gunn was his name, and he dressed him up as a veterinarian.
Okay.
Wasn't a veterinarian, but they put on this show, and they said he was there to watch the animals, which was some rattlesnakes and a tethered mountain lion.
Oh.
So Evel's going to jump a tethered mountain lion and a box of rattlesnakes for this crowd to promote his Honda shop.
Okay.
So he made the jump, but came up a little short and hit the rattlesnake box and broke it open, and the rattlesnakes went everywhere, and the crowd went crazy, and the press jumped all over it, and it was a big deal, and he saw how much interest it brought, and really that was the moment that he actually did his first stunt for people in the show and basically launched his career, and then he came up with the idea of the Daredevils based off of what he'd seen as a kid from Joey Chitwood. So
that is awesome. Yeah, and you've got a box with a rattlesnake in it.
Yeah,
Yep.
We tell the kids it's live, but that snake won't bite. So he went on and started jumping himself, and this was Ascot Park in Los Angeles. J.C. Agajanian was the promoter, a famous racing IndyCar owner and racetrack owner of a legendary track in Southern California. Well, he brought Evel in, and he did several jumps there, but his first jump was the first time he was on ABC Wild World of Sports, which is what's playing right here.
And that's Howard Cosell is commentating it? Wasn't he the world?
Howard did. He was, and Howard did several of his jumps, but not this one.
Okay.
Well, he did the jump that day. He was still in these yellow and black leathers back in that time, and people had never seen anybody do this. He jumped cars, ramp to ramp, and he was really the first guy that did it on a major scale. So
from the picture here, it looks like he's jumping 6 cars?
Yeah,
it's
about 6 cars. Yeah.
And they're parked like in a parking lot. He's jumping side to side,
what
not
you're seeing
front
there,
to back.
Right, is a practice jump. He actually jumped 13 cars for the jump when he did what he did there. So
okay.
Yep.
Wow.
So that really launched his career. He was on Wild World Sports, national TV.
Yeah. And I mean, that was before ESPN and all of that stuff. Back in the 60s and 70s, Wide World of Sports was the big one.
That was it. I mean, if you're going to watch sports on TV, that's where you saw it.
Right,
and you had to schedule your time to watch it, too, because you didn't have a DVR or even a videotape.
No, it was Sunday night at 6 o'clock. If you were going to watch the Wide World of Sports, you were going to watch it then.
Come in from outside and sit down. So people scheduled their time around that. Well, he's in 67, after that jump, that's when he decided to go with the red, white, and blue. And he changed his leathers. It's not what you think of today. They were mainly white, and they had some vertical white and blue stripes on them down the front and down the sleeves. He was riding a Triumph motorcycle during that time.
Okay, so he went from the Honda motorcycle to the Triumph.
That's right. So he's jumping the Triumph now. And the way our museum is set up is the different bike models that he had. So this is the Triumph era that we're in. And what we have here rotating is a Triumph. It's a 67 650, and it's a exact replica, same year and model as the bike that he rode during that time.
Okay.
So
and you have his leathers.
Those are replica leathers.
Was that canvas or was that leather?
They're leather. Yeah.
Okay.
And in this section right here, these are replicas, but they're to show people that these motorcycles, it wasn't anything special. It didn't have extra suspension. It didn't have anything extra in the engine. These were stock street bikes that he was jumping. And, you know,
and let's emphasize that. You know,
Yeah.
I mean, these kids nowadays, they're able to do all these terrific stunts that probably outdoes a lot of the things that Evel Knievel
No
did.
question.
But they've got monoshocks and they've got these suspension systems that are just phenomenal. This bike has the double shock in the back. Like you said, it's just a street bike.
so there's not a lot of those guys that would want to jump this bike or would even do it.
Would even consider it.
They don't consider it. And the other thing is, nobody had done this before Evel. So the guys that are jumping now, I'm not taking anything away from them because they are absolutely amazing. And it would blow Evel's mind if he saw what they're doing. But the reason they're doing it is because of Evel Knievel started it.
Yep.
Somebody had to do it first. And the guy that jumps and tries it first, the guy that did the back flip first or the two flips first, those guys are, you know, they're groundbreakers.
Right.
And Evel was the number one guy for all of these guys. So,
but the reason I would assume that he wrecked as much as what he did is his landings weren't soft, easy landings. They were all brutal because of you don't have the shock travel or anything else in these bikes. He was on the wheel as soon as he hit the, just bottomed out his shocks immediately.
that along with no experience.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, everything was seat of the pants. It wasn't anybody being able to show how they did it.
Right.
You know, so as we're standing here, we're looking at Caesar's Palace, which was probably one of the most famous crashes of his career. And really, you know, he'd been on Wild World of Sports before that, but Caesar's crash got so much attention that it really launched him into Linda's
oohing and awing over here.
She's watching the crash.
Yeah, he came up short on that ramp, didn't
just
he?
a little bit, but to your point, the suspension couldn't absorb it.
Right.
So that's really what the problem was. And he tumbled and crashed, and as you can see here on he had a concussion, he had a broken pelvis, he had a fractured hip, he had a broken femur, a broken wrist, and 2 broken ankles.
Wow.
It was a bad
That's a
crash.
hard hit.
It's a hard hit. So most people, that would be the end of their career.
And what year was that
It was
crash?
1967.
Okay.
Yep. So
I remember coming in and watching that one.
that one,
I think.
well, you did, but ABC, he went to them and said, "Hey, will you film this show?" And they said, "You know, we're not interested, but you know, if you film it, you know, we'll look at it afterwards and see if we want to do anything with it." So he hired actually John Derrick and Linda Evans, and people might know those names from Linda Evans was on Dynasty.
Right.
And John Derrick was actually later married to Bo Derrick.
Okay.
So that's who actually filmed what we're seeing here.
Oh, really?
And they provided the footage to ABC, and they went on to run it a lot after that. They kind of missed the boat and didn't take it when Evel offered it to them. But once they ran it and people saw what happened, and then you know Evel said that he was had a concussion for 29 days. Not a concussion, but he was in a coma. Well, Ray Gunn, his buddy, Ray's been in the museum several times. He goes, I went there the next day. He was awake. So, you know, but Evel used that, you know, to kind of really, you know, how he almost died. And yeah, he really,
the
he
big
almost
rumor
did die.
when I was a kid was he broke every bone in his body. Whether he broke every one or not, I don't know, but dang.
He broke a
lot.
He broke a lot. He didn't break every bone in his body, but more than most. So, yeah, the Caesar's Palace jump really launched his career and brought him into every household in the country.
And that was done on a Triumph.
That was done on a Triumph.
Okay.
And then he moved to, you know, he wasn't getting any support from Triumph, and he got approached by this guy that had Jack McCormick that had worked for Honda Motorcycle Company, and Jack was importing a new brand, a Laverda from Italy, and he was rebranding it an American Eagle. This bike was much bigger and heavier, if you can imagine, than the Triumph street bike.
Okay.
So he gave Evel a couple of bikes to jump with, and Evel started, you know, now he's got a sponsorship for some bikes, which he didn't have before, and he started traveling around. Problem with the American Eagle was the bike was so big that almost half the time he crashed his bike, and it was just too unwieldy to jump. I mean, we've got 2 of them here in the museum, 2 actual bikes. They're the real thing. One's been restored and one is unrestored, so people can see.
Now, were either of these owned by Evel?
No, they're both Evel's bikes.
They're both Evel's
They're the
bikes,
only
okay.
2 that he had.
Okay.
So when we're looking at these videos here of him crashing and jumping, it's on these 2 bikes here.
Okay.
So these are the real things. These are.
Yeah, this one here's got a few dings on it.
Yeah, and it's a survivor. It was actually found in Montana just last year, and we had a ceremony and brought this bike in to the museum in November of last year, and it's really great to have it.
It looks like it's really front heavy. The pictures the video that I'm watching of some of these jumps, it looks like he's coming down on his front wheel almost every time.
It's just a massive bike, and I don't even like pushing it around, let alone trying to jump it in the air. It's just a massive bike. So he didn't jump on it for a long time. He really went about a year and a half jumping this bike, and he moved on. But that's when he got his real golden deal for a motorcycle, and he got a contract with Harley-Davidson, and that's where, you know, hits home with me. And I remember bringing when I was a young kid, and, you know, being associated with Harley-Davidson, that was awesome for a kid like me.
Well, especially growing up in a Harley dealership.
Exactly. That's the point. Yes.
Yeah,
exactly.
You were probably the most popular kid in school.
I was an Evel Knievel nut, and you know, to have this here now is pretty surreal. So he started jumping on the Harleys in 1971. Some of the things we're looking at here, we jumped in the Houston Astrodome. He set an attendance record in the Astrodome for his jumps. He jumped at a NASCAR race in Ontario, California, but that day they were filming the movie Evel Knievel, and George Hamilton played Evel in the movie, and so Evel did the jump, but they were doing cut-ins with George as Evel Knievel to do the filming.
I remember seeing that film.
Yeah, it's really bad.
It was a really bad film, but
it's great.
But that doesn't matter.
No, it didn't matter.
It was still like, wow,
it was still
Evel Knievel. You had to go see it.
It's so true, and you can bring it up now on YouTube and watch it, and it's terrible to watch, but it's great at the same time.
Right,
you know,
right.
it's so fun. It's so fun. So he did jump in Kansas soon after that in 1971 at the Kansas State Fair in Hutchinson.
Okay.
So that was in 1971. I was almost to turn 5, and my parents took me to that event. So,
oh, really?
Yeah, and you can see a picture of the grandstands here, and I'm in the very top row of the grandstands watching that day. So,
but you were there.
I was there, and I remember it. You know, I don't remember anything else from being 4 years old, but I have a vivid memory of everything that happened that day because it was so impactful. And to have the motorcycle here, the actual bike that he jumped that day, wow. That's what we're looking at right here.
And his costuming is the stars and the V and the blue and the red.
What you remember him as?
Yeah, that's what I remember.
Yeah,
but the bike has a seat that's done in, well, it's just like the old banana seats on those Stingrays.
Great point.
And it's red with white stripes on the seat part, and around the outside is blue. Yep. And
so this bike now is kind of yellowish, but it's because of just the paint fade. It's all the original paint. You can see the picture of it's bright white back then, but it's really special to have. You know, this is really the most authentic Evel Knievel motorcycle that there is. I mean, the Smithsonian has one of his bikes. This one's a little more authentic. I mean, theirs has got some pieces on it that aren't true to win from Evel. Those are actual leathers.
Is that a parachute on the back?
Yes, he did as a parachute.
So he was able to slow down faster if he needed to.
It wasn't really for that. It was more for show.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
But that's what he kind of, that's the way he framed it.
Right.
You know, that was the narrative. And you see, everybody asked why there's 2 clutch levers on this bike. You know,
Right.
motorcycles just have one on the left handlebar, where there's 2 here, and that extra lever is to activate the parachute. So what he would do is, after the jump, he would pull the parachute just for show, and there's the parachute right behind you there in that display. And it was a big, one of his sponsors was Olympia Beer, and it was a big Olympia Beer parachute. So it was the way he was promoting. Again, people who didn't do the promotion like this and have sponsors, and he was really the first guy to really.
Okay, now I need to ask you a personal question. Have you rode that bike?
No, we haven't.
You got a big smile on your face.
No, we haven't. We have ridden a couple of the bikes in here. We've ridden the American Eagle. But this one's just a little bit too.
You've sat on it.
We've sat on it. Yeah, I have to admit that. It's pretty crazy just to even think about it.
See it.
Yeah. It's awesome. It's an awesome piece. Probably one of our favorite pieces here. This area, we got some crew jackets. We got more jumps. It's kind of a
and the crew jackets have the Olympia Beer label on them.
He's always promoting his sponsors. You know, everybody does that now.
Right. Oh, yeah.
He was the first. So we go into another era of the Harley-Davidson. This was the first bike we looked at was the cast iron XR750. This is the aluminum alloy XR750. So it was the next iteration of what Harley was producing. It was lighter, faster, and actually a better jump bike for Evel. He actually, the first time he jumped it, he over jumped his ramp because it went so much better. But this is.
Did he wreck it then?
He did. He broke his back on that one. It was in Atlanta. But this shows some of the jumps from the era. His shows were progressing. He was flying into his shows in a helicopter and landing. A lot of drag strip jumps. He would get out of the helicopter in his suit, not his performance suit, but a dress suit, and wave to the crowd, go into the Mack Truck, which was his dressing room, and then he would reappear in his leathers and be ready for the jump. So it was all part of his show. So this bike, we call it the LA bike because he jumped it in the Los Angeles Coliseum.
And this was 1972 era? Or?
1973 was when he started jumping with this later bike here. So.
And you've got some really cool pictures, but I'm interested in this one here, his jet bike. The helicopter jet engine was purchased from drag racer E.J. Potter.
So he made a 3-wheel bike with a jet engine on it, and it was part of his show to, at the event, things would happen before the jump, and one of the things that would happen was he'd bring out this jet bike and run it up and down in front of the ramp, and pretty crazy, really loud.
I remember hearing about it, but I don't think I've ever seen a picture of it.
Yep. That's one piece that is still out there in existence.
And when did he start wearing the cape? I see the cape in one of these pictures. Was that about 1973 that he added the cape?
He did add the cape, and who wears a cape? You got to be a
superhero.
That's right.
But who was? But Evel Knievel was a superhero.
He really was.
Let's get real here.
Real life superhero. So his career went on. He actually jumped at Wembley Stadium in England. This was in '75. So we're looking at the motorcycle jumps here. We're going to get to the Snake River jump. Was in 1974.
Okay.
But these are all the motorcycles. So we're looking at another version of the XR750 here, and this is the actual tank and tail from the Wembley jump. It's a bit dinged up. But that jump that day, when he went over there, Wembley Stadium holds 90,000 people. And when he showed up in England, they had sold 3,000 tickets. So
that's all?
That's all. So he went on a promotional tour around, talked about how England was so lucky to have the United States because they would have lost the war if we wouldn't have helped them out, and kind of got everybody mad in England and kind of just talked smack on him and did his bravado thing. So what we think happened is everybody wanted to come out and see this guy crash. And they got their wish, but he ended up selling out Wembley Stadium. 90,000 people came that day. And he showed up, and there was 13 buses. Problem was, English buses, what he found out, are a little bit wider than buses here in the U.S.
Okay.
And he took a look at it, and he told Frank Gifford from Wild World of Sports, he said, Frank, I can't jump that far. I don't have enough run. I don't have the right gearing. I can't make that. And Frank said, well, why don't you just take one of those buses out? And he said, I told him I'm jumping 13. I got to jump 13. So he knew he wasn't going to be able to make it that day. And he got up at the top of that ski ramp in the stadium, and he went down pretty much knowing that he wasn't going to make it. And I look at this picture here, and it's him sitting in the stands all by himself contemplating the jump. And you can kind of look at that picture, Loren, and you can tell.
You can see it in his face.
Yeah, that he knows that he's not going to make it, and he didn't. And it was another one of the terrible crashes.
And it looks like he just barely didn't make it. Again, his wheel got hung up on the down ramp, his back wheel.
He hit so hard that it launched him a second time into the air. And, he ended up concussion, broken pelvis, broken back, broken hand in this. But what he asked him to do, and you see over here on the right, is with the broken pelvis, broken back, he said, get me up. I want to walk up the ramp and thank the crowd. And they said, no, you need to get on the stretcher. And he goes, no, I walked in here. I'm walking out. So there he is walking with and he got up and he addressed the crowd. And he said, you've seen the last jump. He said, I will never, ever, ever jump again. And that was, he retired that day at Wembley Stadium until about 6 months later, after he healed up, and he went to Kings Island, Ohio, and he came on TV and he said, "You heard me retire on TV, but that was the pain talking. I'm not done, and I tried to jump 13 buses. That's an unlucky number, so I'm going to jump 14 buses." So in Kings Island, he went for it, and he actually made it. But that day, because of his history and what had happened in London, it turned out to be the highest rated Wild World of Sports broadcast ever.
Wow.
And it still holds the record.
Still holds the record.
Yeah. So everybody stopped what they were doing. Again, it wasn't videotaped or DVR'd or anything. Went in their house.
I think I remember watching it.
You probably were one of them because everybody did.
Everybody did.
And sat down as a family and watched him.
Unfortunately, mine was probably still in black and white.
It probably was. Probably was.
I don't remember when we got a color TV, but yeah.
So what you'll see here too is some of the video from that day, and his son Robbie performed with him. At the time, Robbie was 13 years old, and we've got his leathers and his kids from the leathers from that day. And it was really kind of the start of Robbie's career, which they went on to try to launch, years later. So.
And he set a lot of records himself.
Robbie actually jumped more times than Knievel, and he did set a lot of records. The difference was, as we spoke earlier, Robbie used more of a dirt bike with the lighter suspension, and so it wasn't exactly the same, but Robbie did incredible jumps.
He learned from the master.
I
mean, all the mistakes. If Evel couldn't pass on all of his mistakes and learning curves by that time, Robbie wasn't a real smart guy. So
Robbie
I'm hoping he did.
Robbie pushed the limit, and he had some absolutely terrible crashes as well. But that's part of the life of being a daredevil stuntman. If you don't crash a little bit, nobody's interested.
That's right. That's right.
So you got to be able to get back up from it. So this was at the end of his career, the late 70s. He jumped at the Kingdome in Washington, indoor record, 7 buses, but didn't do a really great jump. He wasn't real proud of it. He even said, I didn't do real good today, but he made it. kind of nosed it over onto the front wheel. Went, you know, Jaws was a big movie. And when we look at this too, a lot of people remember when Fonzie went to jump the sharks on the Happy Days.
Okay, yeah.
So that was kind of conceived by Evel, what he had done in '77. He jumped 13 sharks in Chicago. Well, Evel at that time, he had crashed so many times. He was doing a little bit more practicing before the jumps. And during the day before the jump that evening, which the evening jump was a CBS live, what they called the Evel and the Death-Defiers, and it was going to be a live special on CBS. He crashed in warm-ups during the day with no crowd there. Broke both of his arms, hit a cameraman, hurt the cameraman. So they didn't tell the crowd. The crowd went ahead and came and filled the stadium. You can see in the bottom picture down there. Well, Evel's in the hospital with 2 broken arms, and it came to the point for Evel to jump, and no Evel Knievel, and they said, sorry folks, he's not here. He crashed earlier. We're going to show you the video from the crash. People were not happy.
Oh, I'll bet.
Yeah. So he's in the hospital, and he gets a lot of fan mail in the hospital. And our hypothesis is they didn't give him all the fan mail because there was not a lot of friendly fan mail. So there was, we actually acquired 300 unopened fan mail, which is in this display here.
Oh, really?
From that day that were sent to Evel for, into the hospital.
This is really interesting to look at because you can tell, like this one here, there's a picture of a, that's his Snake River jump. But it looks like it was drawn by somebody, maybe in the 5th grade, 6th grade?
So we contacted Joey Martinelli, and that's who's on here. And we found him on Facebook, and he had an Evel Knievel background on his Facebook.
Still.
So we knew it was him. And we showed him the picture, and he said, no, that's not me. I didn't do that. And we're like, no, it has to be you. And we sent the letter along with it. And he says, oh my gosh, that's my dad's handwriting. He was so young, he didn't remember that he had done it, but Evel's his hero. And I said, well, your picture's up in the museum. And so his mind was blown.
Yeah. And you can see a lot of other ones here that are addressed by, here's one that's Evel Knievel, Chicago, Illinois, and their Evel Knievel's picture is, he's got a drawn in pen picture of Evel Knievel going up the ramp on the front of the envelope.
It's awesome. So
this is just so cool.
We opened up every one of them and read them, and it was so much fun. They were all 40 years old.
Yeah.
Never been opened.
Time capsules.
They were time capsules. There was a lot of pictures of kids with their school pictures. You remember the little pictures that you had? And they put it in there and get well, and there were class that had done, the whole class had done letters to Evel, and they put it in. But there was a lot too that were like, weren't happy about the showing up and not being there. So it was a mix of get well and
go to hell.
Yeah, exactly. We put a few up here, but this one was great because it was addressed. It came from London, England. And it was addressed to Mr. Evel Knievel at a hospital in Chicago, Illinois.
I wonder if the postmaster knew what hospital. Yeah.
He was. It made it. That's why it's here.
That's so cool.
They didn't even have an address on it, but it said Evel Knievel at a hospital, and they got it to him. So that whole case is full of great stories and
that had to have been an interesting afternoon or week or whatever it took to read it.
It was great. So this is kind of the end of his career. After that, he kind of fell out of favor with the public, and he was kind of done. So they kind of tried to transition Robbie into Evel Knievel 2. And this is when they went on the world tour, and Robbie and Evel were jumping together. So we're looking at some leathers here from Robbie and Evel from that time. We're also looking at some helmets that's the shark jump helmet there.
Something else I kind of want to bring up. These are your road bike full face helmets.
Right.
They're not your motocross with the chin guard that goes way on out and stuff. But at the beginning, when we first came in here, the helmets were not full-faced helmets.
They weren't.
They were just regular helmets.
His first helmet at that Ascot jump on Wildwood of Sports was the first time he wore a full-face helmet, and it was yellow.
Right. And I remember the full-faced helmets were the ones that you really wanted as a kid.
You did.
I mean, you know, the other ones were all readily available, but the full-faced ones, it was like you'd fight over those.
And that's because Evel made him popular.
He did.
You know, that's a big reason why.
And it's a good thing he did. I mean,
he did.
You know,
he was all about safety, and he was always about an advocate for wearing a helmet. So this display here shows all of his jumps, and he jumped actually over 170 times. What people would be surprised about, and what they're surprised about when they look at this, is he crashed 19.
I was going to say, I'm not seeing that many crash tags for what I thought that he did.
Yeah, because the crash has got the most publicity.
Right.
So they're like, oh, well, that's not too bad. He only crashed 19 times. Well, who's crashed 19 times? You know, I mean, if you start thinking about each one of those crashes and you go, one bad one, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I mean, 19 times is a lot to do, lot for the human body to absorb.
And to be able to die in natural causes.
Yeah.
You know?
He was in pain in his late years. I mean, he was on a lot of pain medicine to keep him, because
I'll bet he knew when the weather was changing.
He did. There's reports that he had over 10 pounds of metal in his body. You know, from just bolting him back together.
But this is amazing. I mean, really, when you like you said, when you look at this, it says success, 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 and then crash, and then you got 10 more successes, crash, 1 success, crash, 10 more, then 2 crashes in a row. But you've got one whole page here that's only got 4 crashes on it.
And then at the end of his career, from 72 through 73, he went basically crash-free. I mean, he was figuring it out at that point.
Yeah, you can
and
see.
It was his career, too. It was his living. He needed to jump to make money. Well, he's not making money when he's in the hospital.
No.
So a lot of those jumps, too, he was still injured. He still had broken bones, but he had to go out and perform.
But here he had a really bad crash, let's say, in Tahoe, Carson City. And that was October 13th, but he was back jumping again by April 24th. That's a 6-month recovery?
Yeah, and you know what? You can even look in a couple of different places here. At the beginning of 72, he jumped on March 3rd and crashed. He was jumping again March 26th and crashed. And he jumped again
June 11th
and crashed.
That just is not much recovery time.
No, and this one he had a broken collarbone while he jumped. So, he actually crashed here. We talked about it earlier in Atlanta when he broke his back, but he came to Oklahoma City the next week and jumped. He shortened up his jump, but he still did it, and then they had to put him back on crutches after he got off the bike. But, he'd said he was going to perform, so if he could actually do it, he did it.
Okay, now I'm standing here in absolute awe. This is just unbelievable. We are looking at the Mack Truck you said you restored. This is a cab over. What year is it?
It's 74.
74
Mack Western.
And this thing is just unbelievable. It's got the white paint with the blue stripes with the Evel Knievel Enterprises in it, and this cab is all done with that same plasticky banana seat material, all vinyl. He's got blue headliner in here with stars on it. The seats are red with white stripes coming up and the blue stars on it, just like his uniforms or his costuming. The engine cover's all covered in the same blue plastic. This is just unbelievable. This is so cool.
It is unbelievable. If you would have seen it in the, and we'll see some pictures here of the condition we got it in. When you look in this cab with the pictures we got, you could see more sky than metal. This thing was so rusted out.
Oh, man.
So it was complete. Every single nut and bolt on this whole truck had to be redone, and we took it down to the bare frame and the engine block and started over. And even the controls you see on the dash, every single thing was redone. Some cool features about this truck, which were unique, and Mack built a kind of a custom version of this for him. It was an automatic, and there was nobody that had automatics, and they did it for him because he had been injured and it was hard for him to
run the clutch.
So when they would stop this truck at truck stops, all the truckers were all envious when they saw that he had an automatic Mack from that era. That was unique.
This is just so cool that it's shiny. I mean, the chrome underneath and the chrome stacks. And then you redid all the interior. He's got the, what is it, this 20-foot living quarters?
What do you call it? Coach. Yeah, the coach. And this was basically his dressing room. So we've had guys from NASCAR and NHRA come in here that have haulers like this now. You know,
right.
They haul semis, but with living quarters. But they are like, Knievels was the first. Nobody had even thought about putting living quarters in a semi. It was the first one, and it set the standard for what you see now as normal. And again, Evel led the way. So, yeah.
This and it's just bright red with the blue and white stripes. And I mean, this is just such a, your eye just goes boom.
It's pretty awesome. It's awesome to have it here. In the trailer that he pulled behind, the coach, that's where he hauled his motorcycles and the ramps. So what you're looking at there, Loren, is the ramps, and all the way back to that first jump in Wild World of Sports, Caesars, Wembley. He only used one set of ramps. It's those ramps right there the whole time.
And they were made out of plywood and
massive lumber with big. No, there wasn't plywood.
Oh, okay.
These took extra large forklifts to move them around because they're so heavy.
And did he use a runway that was wood also, or did he jump up onto? Did he come onto the ramp just from gravel, or?
It depended on what he's jumping. He would jump from the ground, a lot of drag strips, so he was on the pavement. But if he was jumping buses, for instance, he used the same ramps. So they had to elevate the ramp up to the height of the bus as opposed to a car.
Okay.
So if they elevated the ramp up, that meant they had to elevate the run up. So at Wembley Stadium, when he jumped the buses, you'll see he's on a plywood raised run up.
Yeah.
Same with Kings Island. So he couldn't do it from the ground because he's using the same ramps, and they would run him right into the middle of the truck or the bus. So they had to raise the ramp up and raise his runway up. So that's why he was...
Okay, because I saw what looked like...
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Wow.
So we're coming around the corner here. There's a 20-minute documentary of the restoration of the Big Red, the Mack Truck. It's called Big Red.
Okay. And I'm gonna when we get through here, I'm gonna come take a look at some of this video stuff because this is just so cool. And because we're audio, we just got to describe, and we will have some pictures on the Facebook page.
I wish everybody could see it.
This is just...
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, hopefully you can put some pictures up. I tell you, we've hauled this around.
Let me. Hey, Linda, did you get pictures of the inside of the cab of this thing and some of that? You didn't? Okay. Yeah. So Linda's my photographer.
Yeah.
I'm too busy talking to get all the good pictures, so I always have to steal them from her phone in order to put them on.
So we have toured Big Red around.
Oh, have you?
Yeah. Mack Trucks came and saw about the time we were finishing this and paid a visit. Their executives flew in to see it because it's a big deal for their company. And they were very happy with what we had done. And they actually told us it's the nicest restoration they'd ever seen of a Mack Truck. Well, they jumped on board, and we had two semis, and one each had a trailer, and we put the coach on one and the trailer on the other and toured it around and went to some we went to Sturgis, we went to NASCAR races, we went to truck shows, we went to Hollywood for the premiere of Johnny Knoxville's film called Being Evil. Okay. And the truck was at the premiere, so we got to go out and hang out with Knoxville and his crew. But what would happen when they're driving this down the highway is, obviously in one lane, and cars would be passing in the left lane. Well, what people would do is they would go up and then start taking pictures. So it blocked both lanes.
Oh, yeah.
And always when this truck was going down the road, or the trucks, gigantic mile-long traffic jams behind it because the next person would then pull up and take pictures, and then the next person would pull up and slow down, so nobody could pass. And there was just a gigantic traffic jam of this thing going down the road. Caused all sorts of problems.
It probably even caused problems going the other way.
It sure did. It sure did.
Wow.
And I think that was the same when Evel was running it back in the day too.
That is just, it is such a pretty truck. It's just unbelievable.
Yep.
And then you've got Evel Knievel.
It's a trike that was, people are going to be familiar with the name of George Barris, and he was...
okay.
Yeah,
he was a big collector in Reno, wasn't it?
He was not a collector. He was a car builder, and he did cars like the Munsters.
Okay, right.
All of the Hollywood big cars, the Batmobile.
Okay.
He was the creator of that. Well, Toys, AMF Toys had a little 3-wheel Evel Knievel tricycle.
Okay.
And they hired him to build a full version replica of it with the Harley-Davidson Sportster. And that's what we're looking at here, is this, that AMF had commissioned Barris to build. Evel was really only around at one time, and he rode it on to the Sonny and Cher show.
Okay.
So that's what's playing there in the background.
Okay.
Is he did a little skit with it, and that's the time that Evel was associated with it. You can, Linda's going to get some pictures here of the inside of the coach, but you can walk up some stairs and look in the coach, and you can see the bar there. Dressing room's back here. There's a restroom in it. The bar was on a swivel.
Okay.
And he would swivel it out, and what was below it was a compartment where his safe was welded into the bottom of the frame of the coach. So that was where he put his cash, and he only jumped for cash.
Okay.
You know, he wasn't going to wait until afterwards and have somebody write him a check. You know, that wasn't going to fly. And he also requested it before he jumped, not after.
Right.
You know? So he would get the cash, put it in the safe. So we got the safe when we were restoring it, and we opened up, and there wasn't any cash left.
Oh, well, that's too bad.
Yeah. So you can see where he hauled his motorcycles here in the back of the trailer.
Right.
And then these pictures, as we talked about, show the condition of the truck when we got it, and the work that had to be done. It was about 2 years worth of work to bring this thing back. You can see the inside.
Well,
it was
all
raining.
I can say, Mike, is this is one heck of an awesome Mack Truck restoration for somebody that's never done one.
Well, and as I said before, we can't take full credit for it. There was a lot of guys that jumped in and helped. Chuck Stover, Todd Williams were my two main partners on it, and a lot of other people too. But we kind of were the main contractors on it, did a lot of the work ourselves. But
This
it was a
thing's
team
just
effort.
Gorgeous. It is absolutely gorgeous.
So this is what we call our media hallway, and you hear some of the audio of Evel talking, the Wild Water Sports music, and then what we have on the walls here is about 300 articles of newspapers that are blown up, and it really just shows the impact and how much press Evel got through his career. It's just unbelievable headlines, and just to stand in here and just look at the headlines, let alone read the stories, it's crazy. And on the other wall here, there's a quote, and the quote says, "I created Evel Knievel, and then he sort of got away from me." And it was Evel Knievel. You know, he had to keep outdoing himself, and you know that caused a lot of injuries.
Oh yeah.
You know, is what he
Well,
had.
especially like you were saying there in England, you know, where he knew he wasn't going to make it, but had to do it anyway.
More than once that happened. More than once. So we'll head upstairs now. So the museum is 2 levels. It's about 12,000 square feet. I think people are surprised at how many artifacts we have. It's not just, and you know, as we were going through there talking too, we didn't talk about every single artifact that was there. As we're going up the stairs, we're in the hallway here, and it's 2 levels high, and we've got a bike suspended in the air with the with Evel jumping it and his parachute in the back, and it's kind of a nice way to display the parachute.
Yeah, you get to see the parachute we were talking about earlier.
Yep.
I'm not a stuntman. I'm not a daredevil. I'm an explorer.
So all throughout the
quote by
museum
Evel
are,
Knievel.
are quotes that he had, and he had a lot of great quotes. This is a sign telling you that this direction to Snake River, but this is an actual artifact. That's an artifact from the site. So on the second floor here, we have a lot more. It's a lot more interactive up here. But the section we're looking at this point is the wardrobe. So it's got a lot of his kind of outlandish outfits. First thing we see here is a hockey outfit.
Yeah.
So in Butte, hockey was big, and Evel was a hockey player.
Okay.
And this was a shirt, it says Knievel on the back, and we're playing on a little TV, a skit that he did with Donnie Marie.
Yeah. And that's an old TV too.
Yeah. So,
one that now this is before the day when you had a remote control. Remote control was walk up, turn the channel to one of the 5 or 6 channels that you had.
Yeah, your remote control was your kid telling him to go up and get the...
Well, I was a remote control. I never had by the time I had kids, there were remote controls.
Yeah, so the hockey stick here too, he had the hockey stick on the show. That's the actual one. So those are cool artifacts from the Donnie Marie show. And then it's just some of his suits. He played in a lot of golf. He was a big-time golfer. Played in a lot of celebrity golf tournaments. Crazy overalls that he played in some tournaments with. But white suit with that looks like his leathers that he would wear out. Pretty famous for his evenings out was Evel. In this is kind of our high-end artifacts, and we're looking at a set of boxing gloves here. One of his good friends was Muhammad Ali. And you can read what it says on there. To Evel.
Okay, to Evel with
love Muhammad Ali.
Wow.
Yeah, so pretty cool to have those. We've got his cane here.
You've got a helmet that is all scratched up.
So that helmet is not only just a scratched up helmet, that's the Caesar's Palace helmet.
That's the okay.
So last time that was worn was all those scratches were from the parking lot of Caesar's Palace, and there you go. It's an amazing piece.
And then some jewelry.
His actual jewelry, and then this helmet here is the Wembley Stadium helmet. So it is those scratches are from the Wembley Stadium floor in London.
And it says "Color me lucky" on the bottom.
That was his catchphrase. Yeah, that was his catchphrase. This is an interactive piece here, so it's a touch screen, and when you touch it, Evel comes up on the screen here, and when I move my hand around, I'm moving a circle around on the screen, and it's exposing his bones.
Now isn't that cool?
So when you come to like he broke his back there, you see it 6 times.
6 times.
So I can hit these hot spots, and he broke his back in Monroe, Washington, in Kent, Washington, Long Pond, Pennsylvania, Atlanta, Georgia, Wisconsin, and London. And then if I choose, I can play the video of the crash. Yeah. Or I can look at, since this is the back, I can look at his x-rays.
The actual x-rays.
Yeah. So we have over 40 x-rays. So it's basically, it's a history of how Evel broke himself up. And you can also go over to one of these screens.
You've got what, 3 touch screens here?
Yeah, and these screens here, you pick a bone, and then you can look at the x-ray.
Oh, all the screws and metal plates and wow.
Yeah. So people find that interesting. We call it bad to the bones.
Yeah. Cool. That is.
All right, we'll work our way down here. The thing that everybody asks about when they come into the museum are the toys, because we all grew up with the toys. And there's the trike that we looked at downstairs that was in full
size,
full scale.
And this here's a little pedal bike.
That's the pedal bike that was made after. A lot of guys had and girls had the the bicycle back in the day, the Evel Knievel bicycle. People remember the pinball machine.
I remember the pinball machine.
Yeah, but the number one thing that everybody asks about and talks about is the stunt cycle toy. And that was the hottest selling toy of the 1970s. Frankly, if there was one thing that made Evel all of his money, most of his money, above and beyond the jumps, was this toy.
Really?
That's what he was getting $1 million royalty checks from Ideal on the toy. So he actually made more money from this than he did actually jumping motorcycles.
You got the metal lunchbox, tons of puzzles.
The costume, all of the other things that came off the stunt
Evel
toy.
Knievel curtains and bedspreads and wow.
The Wheaties box.
The Wheaties box.
He was on the front of Wheaties. So there's a quote here. It says, "I was the first person to be a subject of a successful action figure and toy line." But the point of that is he, you know, there was Batman, there was Superman,
right?
Captain America, and they had figures. You know, he was the first actual person.
But he was a real hero.
He was a real person. He was the first actual living person that had a figure, an action figure.
He started it.
Wow.
He started it. This is a fun thing. We thought it would be enjoyable for kids to plan a jump. So you can pick your outfit. You know, you can change what outfit you want. You can change your ramp angle. You can change how far you want to jump. And then these are all different bikes that Evel jumped over his career.
Well, that's fun.
And then you can jump buses, cars, fountains, police cars, and then you're ready for a jump. And what it'll do is you pick your speed, and then you see if you make it. Yep, and I did not make it. So you can try it. You get a couple.
Well, you better
tries.
try it at 95 miles an hour this next time.
You got to go.
So did he have a speedometer on most of his bikes, or how did he judge his speed?
Seat of the pants.
Because I mean, it was all pretty well planned out. He knew that he had to be going 75 miles an hour when he took off in order to make this jump and still hit the ramp on the downslope instead of missing the ramp altogether and over jumping or under jumping, didn't he?
That's right. But it was all seat of the pants. He didn't have a speedometer. So a lot of the times Ray, his main crew guy, we talked to Ray about that, and Ray said, yeah, I was his speedometer. So Evel would do his speed runs, and Ray would stand there and he'd say, yeah, it looks about right. So they didn't have the science back then, you know, there wasn't the physics and to figure it all out, and a lot of times these jumps now, they go into that, and they figure out how far they need to go in the speed and the angle.
Right.
And this is a physics experiment here, what we're doing on this game, which we built for kids, but we found out adults love it too. There's a lot of laughing and having fun in here trying to make this jump. So,
that's just unbelievable that was all guesswork.
Yeah.
Because it's like we saw several of the pictures where he missed by only the back tire.
Right.
You know, but...
2 more miles an hour, he would have had it.
2 more miles, 3 more miles an hour.
He's got a quote that says, the only thing I regret is not going a little faster on a few jumps. You know?
Yeah, but then again, you said that when he changed over from the Honda, I think, to the Triumph, he started over jumping because it was so much lighter.
He always had to deal with that too when he was jumping new bikes, so it kind of changed the whole scenario.
Yeah, over jumping, you don't end up with the downslope, you just all boom.
That's right.
Oh,
That's right.
Man. Like we did, you know, I don't know how many times I thought my knees were going to break because I jumped my bicycle onto the flat ground.
Exactly. Wasn't pretty, right? So this is kind of the attraction that people love the most, our interactive. And right now with COVID, we can't use it. But you get to sit on an actual XR750 bike like Evel's. The virtual reality goggles you put on, and you put on headphones. And you start this up, and we filmed a jump. We brought in a daredevil, Doug Danger from Massachusetts. He rode in an XR750, and he jumped 15 police cars in downtown Topeka.
Okay.
So that's what we're looking at here on this screen. But when you put the goggles on, it actually feels like you're jumping. The bike shakes. You can see the fan in the front. The faster you go, the more the wind blows on you. So you get all the senses that you're jumping, and you go for a jump over 15 police cars, and he's got cameras on his helmet right there, 360-degree cameras. So you can turn your head and look around in any direction as you're going, and it gives you the real version of what's happening. So the reason we can't use it with COVID is we have to spot people because they'll fall off if we sometimes we have to hang on to them.
If he crashes on this jump, do you have a little guy from the back room come out and beat you up with a baseball bat just so you get that feel too?
That's the next version. We haven't got that far yet. But the fun thing in here is you hear people screaming. Sometimes you hear cuss words. It's really fun and laughing, and it's very realistic. Even Doug, the guy that did the jump, did it, and he said that's about what it feels like. So
wow,
came out pretty well.
That's too cool. I'll have to come back another time and try it again.
We hope it's soon. You can actually do a jump and not break any bones.
Yeah.
So.
And then you've got several of the one-armed bandits here that are Evel Knievel oriented, and Johnny Carson interviewing.
All 70s stuff. It just takes you back, you know. It's what this museum does. It just takes you back to the 1970s, and he licensed everything he could. You know, that's no doubt about it. So,
is this the actual Snake River jump machine?
This is an actual sky cycle. So what people didn't know, and what they kind of hid, was there was two of these beasts.
Okay.
They made a test one and an actual one, and Evel wanted to test this jump before he did it because it was so sketchy.
Let's go back and talk about this jump. Evel Knievel's already retired, but he's planning his next big event.
He didn't retire. This was in the middle of his career, and it was actually after about Caesars. He goes back that far that he decided he was going to jump the Grand Canyon.
Right, the Grand Canyon was the initial.
And he got a letter, which we have here, from Stuart Udall from the Department of the Interior saying no permit for such land use should be issued by this department. So they would not let him jump the Grand Canyon. So he leased some land at Snake River Canyon in Idaho.
We're at in Idaho, by Twin Falls?
That's by Twin Falls, exactly. Okay. Yep, and it's the ramp site is still there.
Is it really?
Yeah, yep. He had to build up a big kind of dirt ramp, and then he put his sky cycle ramp on top of that.
And the sky cycle part of it's still there, or just the dirt part?
Just the dirt part.
Okay.
Yep. So he hired Robert Truex to build this sky cycle, and Robert built two. They tested one early on, which was actually the first iteration of it, and they actually intentionally underpowered it so that it would go into the river, and the press was all there to see it, to make it look like this was a very dangerous thing. So that worked out great. And then the promoter said, if anybody sees a successful jump here, we're going to take about half the money we're going to pay you away. So they hit it, and they jumped with this rocket about a month before the actual jump, and they put a dummy in there, and this thing went up in the air and landed right in the river. So at that point, Evel was like pretty stressed that he wasn't going to live.
Right.
So the actual jump came around, same exact rocket, same thing happened. You know, he ended up going into the river. Luckily, he didn't go in all the way into the river, but he survived it. We say it was a success because he lived.
Right.
He actually made it across, but it was a super windy day, and they almost called it off, but it was live pay-per-view, huge crowd. There really wasn't any way to...
Another one that he probably knew he wasn't going to make, but he was already too committed to not.
So why don't you read the quote on the wall there that he says?
When the countdown got down to 3, I said, God take care of me, here I come, and punched the fire button. Wow.
Yeah. Yep.
Wow.
Yep.
And he made it.
He lived. He lived. He didn't make it across. The rocket made it across, and then the wind blew it back. But
is that what?
Yeah.
I remember watching.
Yeah, the parachute actually came out as he was exiting the ramp. So it
It was premature.
It was actually premature, and it was a technical failure. There's the parachute up on the wall there.
Okay.
And that kept him from making it. You know, I mean, it was lucky it didn't blow the parachute off, because I really don't know how the parachute stayed on under the firing of it. It was a steam-powered rocket, which a lot of people don't know, but it was just...
It was steam-powered?
Yeah, it had a big tank in it, and they heated up the water to almost 600 degrees and basically just pulled the plug. And that's what he was powered by. So he was just along for the ride. It wasn't a jet or anything like that.
I thought it was jet.
Yeah, yep.
Oh, wow.
In fact, when we brought it in, the city was all in a tizzy because they wanted to make sure we had decommissioned it and there was no jet fuel in it. And I'm like, nope, it was powered by water, you know. So.
And so this was the test one.
Yep.
Where did the actual
the Knievels have the other one?
The Knievels have it.
Yep. And then the ramp here that we're looking at is the only last piece of the actual ramp that's in existence. So that's the actual ramp, and then you see the dirt below us here. We went to the site and brought back the dirt in buckets. So this is the actual dirt from Twin Falls or from Snake River.
I'm going to have to go visit that site. I've got a niece and nephew that live there in Twin Falls. So,
yeah, perfect.
Yeah, so I'll have to go visit them.
And you can hear in the background the video that's running in here, and it's just explaining the whole jump and everything that happened.
Steam power.
Steam powered.
Wow.
So one great story too from this event was when they were test fitting Evel about a week before, he was in the rocket and he was being pretty cantankerous and pretty stressed about everything. And they put him in and strapped him in, and they found out that he could not unstrap himself with his suit the way it was strapped to him. So they quickly had another suit made in Los Angeles and flew his jet down there, brought this new suit back that strapped him in differently so that he could actually unlatch himself in case he needed to escape. Well, the event came around that day, and Evel, they did the whole pomp and circumstances. There was a band. They did the national anthem. It was on pay-per-view. They decided to go, make the jump. And they started fitting him down into it as they put him in to get ready to go. And the crew said, Evel, you put the wrong suit on. You put the old suit on.
Uh-oh.
And he said, too late now. I'm not going to go change my suit. So had he gone into the river, there would have been no chance for him to unbuckle himself, and he would have surely drowned. But what actually happened was he went down into the canyon and he landed about 10 feet from the water on the side bank. Otherwise, he would have drowned, and everybody would have stood there and watched the guy drown. That was just how lucky he was.
There he goes. We're watching the video. I guess we're not going to see the whole jump. They're talking.
They're talking, yeah.
Wow.
So
this is just so cool.
You know, other things you see here in the museum, we've got a movie theater. It's 1970s style movie theater, and it's playing clips from the movie we talked about earlier, Evel Knievel, and then later in 1977 they did another movie called Viva Knievel, where Evel played himself.
Okay.
Which was, you know, we talked about it wasn't a really good movie in '71 when George did it. Well, Evel was not an actor. He's a much better jumper than an actor, and that was even a worse movie. But the people that played in it, you know, you look at the list of names, it was Leslie Nielsen, Cameron Mitchell, Red Buttons, Lauren Hutton. I mean, it was a really good cast of characters, but it was it's so fun to watch. That's the
1977 version.
Yeah, and then the other movie that's playing in here was a TV pilot. And this is what's playing right now, and it was Sam Elliott played him as Evel Knievel in this TV pilot that never took off, but it had one airing. So people are surprised that Sam Elliott played Evel Knievel too. And then our last section here, we have an Indy car, and we go back to talking about that first jump he did on Wild World Sports with J.C. Agajanian, who was an IndyCar owner.
Okay.
Well, they became friends, and in 1977, Evel jumped in on board with J.C., and he sponsored this car. And Gary Bettenhausen drove it at the Indianapolis 500 in 1977. So we're lucky enough the Agajanian family put this car on display here. That's the Evel Knievel Special. So it's pretty sexy car, huh?
This is just so awesome, the things that you guys have been able to acquire and put together. And
people are surprised. Yeah. And now we're looking at this
Cadillac pickup.
Yeah, which was completely custom made for Evel. A lot of people say, oh, it was a flower car because Cadillacs had these cars that for funerals where they'd put the flowers in the back. This is not a flower car. This is a custom made Cadillac pickup.
And what's the front end? This is a lot like a El Camino.
It looks like an El Camino.
It's a Cadillac El Camino, and the front part of it, they were using like Chevelles and some of that for the early El Caminos. This would have been what, a Cadillac Eldorado or something?
I would say it was an Eldorado. Yep.
I mean, this thing is just, it's so cool looking. It's got the extended tail lights like the Cadillac had with the small tailgate. Of course, there's a place to tie down your bike in the back.
There is. And he actually put this in Big Red. And when they sent everything over on a boat to London, he drove this car around London, and this was part of his promotion tour when he was trying to get the tickets going. So this was the car he drove around, and there's video of him in this car in London. So
wow.
His daughter told us a cool story when she came through the museum. Tracy, she said when she was getting her driver's license, she drove it to the DMV and to take the driving test, and the person, the guy there that was giving the test said, did you just drive up in that car, before you got your license? And she said, yeah, I did. And he's like, yeah, you passed. So gave her a driver's license there.
Wow.
So she was very happy to see this car.
That guy's not real smart. I would have said, I need to go for a test drive with you. I mean,
I think her dad may have been with him too, so that probably gave a little bit of help to getting past the test. So
here's a couple more quotes. I was someone who the rest of the world could relate to, no matter how young or old. I took great pride in being different and of making a difference in this world, and I still do. And then another one by Matthew McConaughey. He's forever in flight now. He doesn't have to come back down. He doesn't have to land.
So Matthew gave the eulogy at his funeral. Matthew and Evel were friends.
Okay.
And so that was a quote from his funeral.
Wow.
So the last pieces here is about the family, which you're reading about there, and then about Robbie's career. We got some Robbie's suits here, but then we've also got his legacy. And we've got people like Shaun White, Tony Hawk, Travis Pastrana, Dale Earnhardt Jr., Matt Hoffman, Clint Boyer, who's from close by here, Robbie Madison. These are extreme sports legends that all say their inspiration was Evel Knievel. And really, if you look at it, he created a whole culture, a whole new sport with extreme sports.
Yeah.
And the X Games, I think a lot of people would say there might not have been an X Games without Evel Knievel, or these guys would have had careers because that's who inspired them. So his lasting legacy, it's hard to put a real figure on what he's done, but all of those guys owe their careers to him.
Yeah.
And what we watch on TV and everything now all started with Evel Knievel. So it's bigger than a lot of people understand, and that's why there's a museum for him. That's why we're honored to have it here.
I would, yeah.
You can see I still get goosebumps every time I'm in here that it's here. I think we've never had a person go through this and say, wow, it wasn't what I was hoping for. It wasn't what I expected. I think you would agree.
I was going to say, I was expecting a small little, I was expecting nothing like this. This is just so unbelievably cool. And it brings to life a childhood hero. I mean, really, when I think of childhood heroes, as far as people that I I don't know if I necessarily wanted to be like, but that I built, you know, my bicycle and all of that kind of stuff around. It was always Evel Knievel. And, you know, I don't know what his personal life really was like. I've heard that it was kind of a shambles in some ways. I don't know if that's true or not.
No, it's true.
It's been portrayed that way.
It's true. And it's like a lot of celebrity figures that, you know, you see one side and you see the other. And yeah, I mean, what a life. I mean, that's a hard life for a family, a hard lifestyle. And Evel was not a perfect guy. He had a lot of faults. Doesn't take away from what he accomplished. And our museum is based on his accomplishments.
Right.
There's documentaries, books, and stories about his whole life that people can read. And, you know, he was human.
Right.
There's no doubt about it. Wasn't a perfect guy. But what he did, how he inspired people in a true way, and inspired a whole generation, that was real.
That was.
And there's
it's
no taking it away.
Almost 2 generations.
It's 2 generations, right. And there's no taking it away. And when people come to the museum, they can relive that.
Yeah, and this is just absolutely awesome. Now, do you guys have a website?
We do, evelknievelmuseum.com.
Okay.
Fun thing about the website, I mean, you can see some of the museum on there. There's also a lot of merchandise out there. You know, we have an online store, and the thing we see with that online store is the international acclaim that Evel have, because on a daily basis we get international orders from Europe, from all over the world.
Right.
I mean, just even the Far East will have orders from. So Evel made an impact worldwide. I mean, it was Evel and Elvis.
I was going to say, who else is there?
And basically, Evel, Elvis, and Muhammad Ali, Led Zeppelin. But it was, that was the 70s. And he went strong from about 67, we saw in there, to about 77. It was really only about a 10-year career that accomplished all this. And he famously says he made about 62 million and he spent about 64 million. So he was spending it, and we look at the pictures here, and the boats, the jets, the cars. Because he always thought his next jump might be the last, so what is he going to save it for?
Exactly.
So he lived hard, he lived big, and again, that was part of the appeal, you know, to him.
Yeah. Well, I so appreciate you spending the time with us. Oh, before we go, I need to address something else. I made a wrong turn when I came down here, and I walked down a set of stairs, and I noticed it's probably your restoration shop down there, but you've got all kinds of the old collector bikes down there kind of lining the walls. If anybody's interested in old Harleys, you've got several of them down there. Besides this shop, you've got almost another museum downstairs.
We do have 2 museums. It's yesterday's museum. And before we added the Evel Knievel Museum, that was one of the attractions here. We talked about our restorations. So we have about 30 bikes on display and memorabilia. And
are they all Harleys?
They're all Harleys.
They're all Harleys?
Yeah. So that's part of the visit. People can enjoy that too. We also have a barbecue restaurant, which is operating on a daily basis. And we have a hair salon, we have an insurance company, and what we call Harleytown out on the back side of the building, which you haven't seen yet.
I haven't seen.
But there's a lot to do here. So you can eat, you can get the Evel Knievel Museum, you can even get a haircut. You know,
right here in Topeka, Kansas.
Yeah. You can get it. We can take care of you.
I can get lost in Topeka, by the way. I got on the wrong road and ended up on a toll road, and I'm going, this is not the way to go.
Yeah, well, you made it. We're glad you did. Hope you enjoyed your stay. It was a pleasure for us to be on your podcast. We're honored, and thank you for having us.
This one's moving up into my top 10, and I've been to a lot of museums. This one here is definitely one that if you're anywhere near Topeka, Kansas, you need to come, and you were born in the 60s, 70s, you need to be here and see this. This is just so unbelievable. I so appreciate your time, Mike, and I always finish out my podcast saying the world is full of wonders. People need to get out and explore, see what's out here. This is unbelievable. You need to be here. And everybody, have an absolutely wonder-filled day.
Haul the roll and go, where am I to go? Meet Johnny, where am I to go? For I'm a young and a sailor lad, and where am I to go?